25 years to uncover. This is the story of Anne Frank, like you've never heard before. Anne Frank, a young girl with dreams of becoming a writer, left behind a diary that would do just that. Written during her time in hiding from the Nazi regime, her words not only survived the darkest days of history, but continue to inspire and educate millions. Though she was just a teenager, her diary gives voice to the millions who suffered during the Holocaust, offering a timeless reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. But who was Anne Frank beyond the pages of her diary? What led to her tragic fate? And who or what was the cause of their betrayal? Hello, and welcome to Historicalm ASMR, a YouTube channel for an educational and calming bedtime experience. If you enjoy these sleepy historical stories, don't forget to subscribe for more journeys through history. Now, let's journey back to 1929 into the life of Anne Frank and the world she lived in. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929, in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, to Otto Frank and Edith Frank Hollander. The family was of Jewish descent, and while they initially lived a relatively normal life, everything changed when the Nazis came to power in 1933. Under Adolf Hitler's regime, the rights of Jewish people were increasingly restricted, and the Frank family began to feel the growing threat of persecution. In 1933, when Anne was just 4 years old, her father, Otto Frank, made the life-changing decision to move the family out of Germany to escape the growing dangers of Nazi persecution. The Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, had risen to power earlier that year, and with their control, they began implementing dangerous policies rooted in racism, nationalism, and anti-Semitism. The Nazis viewed Jewish people as inferior, blaming them for Germany's economic and social problem. As their grip on Germany tightened, so did the persecution of Jewish citizens. In response to these escalating threats, Otto sought refuge for his family in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, believing it to be a safer place to escape the growing wave of hatred in Germany. He started a new business there, and for a time, the Frank family lived in relative peace. Anne went to school in Amsterdam, where she learned Dutch and made new friends. Her closest friend was Jacqueline van Marsen. Together, they shared quiet moments of happiness, building memories in a world that seemed so safe. A time when school and friendship were the heart of Anne's world. However, the respite would prove to be short-lived. By 1940, Germany invaded the Netherlands, and the Nazis extended their control over the country. The safety the Franks had hoped for vanished. Anti-Semitic policies spread rapidly, stripping Jewish citizens of their rights and freedoms. The walls were closing in. What they didn't yet know was that soon, survival would depend on disappearing completely. May 10th, 1940. The sky above the Netherlands is shattered by the roar of German warplanes. In a matter of days, the Dutch resistance crumbles. Surrender is swift. The Nazi regime tightens its grip. For Jewish families like the Franks, the world changes overnight. The streets they once walked freely become hostile. The walls begin to close in. The German authorities waste no time. New laws, new restrictions, each one designed to isolate, humiliate, and erase an entire people. The The so-called Aryan race was at the heart of Nazi ideology. A vision of supposed purity, blonde hair, blue eyes, Northern European descent. They believed this group was superior, destined to rule. But this idea was nothing more than pseudoscience, a dangerous myth. And yet, it became the justification for unimaginable suffering. Millions were persecuted, simply for not fitting this false ideal. A yellow star of David, sewn onto clothing, a mark of exclusion. Bicycles were forbidden, public transport off limits, parks and cinemas, now places they can never enter again. Jewish children ripped from their schools, forced into segregated institutions. A slow, systematic suffocation of freedom. Otto Frank sees the storm coming. Desperate, he tries to flee. America, Switzerland, anywhere beyond the reach of the Nazi machine. But the borders close. Hope fades. By 1942, there was nowhere left to run. And then the deportations begin. Trains leave the Netherlands, their destinations cloaked in whispers and fear. Deportation is no longer a distant threat. It is here. Otto Frank knows there is no time to wait. A secret hiding place. A desperate gamble. But in Nazi-occupied Europe, even the shadows are not safe. On July 5th, 1942, a letter arrived that changed everything. 16-year-old Margot Frank, hands trembling, read the chilling summons. She was ordered to report for work at a German labor camp. The Franks knew the truth. This was no labor assignment. It was a death sentence. The very next day, they vanished. Their refuge lay behind a movable bookcase in Otto Frank's Amsterdam business. A hidden annex, small and suffocating. Space was scarce for the four of them, and even more so when they were joined by four others. Hermann, Augusta, and Peter von Pels, whom Anne called the Von Dons, and a dentist, Fritz Pfeffer. The air in the annex was thick with dread, with the constant weight of fear pressing down on the residents. Silence was their only ally during the day, as they dared not make a sound, knowing that even the smallest noise could betray them to the workers in the building below. The small group of trusted helpers, risking their lives daily, provided them with food, supplies, and the latest whispers of a world beyond the walls, a world they could only imagine but never touch. For Anne, the confines of the annex were both a prison and a stage. A young girl, full of dreams and ambitions, trapped in a reality far from the life she had once envisioned. Each day bled into the next, a blur of uncertainty and frustration. But amid the crushing isolation, Anne found refuge in the one thing that could not be taken from her: her writing. Her diary, a quiet rebellion against the darkness, became her sole escape. Through it, she poured her fears, her hopes, and the quiet desperation of her soul. Anne's world was shrinking with each passing day, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She clung to the belief that her words, her thoughts, her voice would one day break free, reaching the ears of the world. Little did she know, the legacy of her diary would echo through the history, far beyond the walls of the annex, becoming a beacon for generations to come. For over 2 years, Anne Frank poured her heart, fears, and deepest dreams into the pages of her diary. In those quiet moments, the diary became her only confidant, a place where the words she couldn't speak aloud could finally escape. She wrote of the endless struggles of living in such confined spaces, the frustrations with the others who shared her captivity, and the flickering hopes that somehow a future beyond the Annex still existed. And despite the oppressive darkness of the world outside, Anne held on to a glimmer of faith in humanity, writing with remarkable conviction. I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. In March 1944, Anne heard a broadcast from the Dutch government in exile, calling on people to document their lives under Nazi rule. That message deeply moved her. Determined, she began revising her diary, imagining a time after the war when her words would be more than memories, a testament to the suffering of Jewish families. She even gave it a name, the Secret Annex, a quiet tribute to the world she had come to know behind those walls. But Anne's diary was more than just a chronicle of war. It was an intimate exploration of her own identity, her thoughts on love, and the unyielding complexities of human nature. The wisdom within her pages far surpassed the years she had lived, transforming her story into one of the most profound, personal accounts of the Holocaust. Yet, as she revised her final thoughts, fate's shadow loomed closer. The fragile safety of the secret annex was about to be shattered, and with it, the young girl's dream of sharing her story with the world. Movement in the secret annex was life-threatening. Every step, every breath was carefully calculated, as if the walls themselves could hear. They barely dared to move, afraid that even the slightest sound, a scraping chair, a falling pen, would mean their discovery. Their world was a prison of silence. For over 2 years, Anne Frank and her family lived in constant fear. The threat of discovery was everywhere. Footsteps outside made the air freeze. The fear of the SS soldiers, who could kick down the door at any moment, hung like a shadow over them. The dreaded knock could come at any moment. Their hiding place felt less and less safe, until that fear one day became a reality. Then, on the morning of August 4th, 1944, the unimaginable happened. The knock on the door they had feared so much came. Nazi officers stormed the secret annex, tearing apart the fragile world Anne Frank and the others had clung to. The 8 residents of the annex, along with 2 of their brave helpers who had risked everything to keep them safe, were arrested. The whispers of fear that had haunted them for so long were now a harsh reality. The betrayal of Arnold Bergh. For years, it remained a mystery. Who had betrayed Anne Frank and the others in the secret annex? Theorists speculated about an anonymous tip or a chance discovery. But it wasn't until 75 years later that the truth finally came to light. Extensive research revealed that Arnold Bergh, a Jewish notary and member of the Jewish Council, was responsible for passing on the addresses of people in hiding to the Nazis. Confronted with threats and blackmail, he, in a desperate attempt to save his own family, allegedly gave up the Frank family's location. A tragic act, born out of fear and the will to survive, but with fatal consequences. On August 4th, 1944, the Gestapo raided the secret annex. The hiding place was no longer safe. The betrayal had reached them. After their arrest, Anne and the others were taken to Westerbork, a transit camp in the Netherlands, where they endured forced labor and extreme hardships for a month. On September 3rd, 1944, they were packed into overcrowded cattle cars and deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp. It was the last transport from Westerbork to Auschwitz. Upon arrival, the men and women were separated. Otto Frank was torn from his wife and daughters, never to see them again. Those deemed unfit for labor were immediately sent to the gas chambers. Edith Frank died in January 1945 from exhaustion and starvation. Anne and Margot were later moved to Bergen-Belsen, where disease and hunger ravaged the camp. In February 1945, both sisters fell seriously ill and died just weeks before the camp was liberated. Anne was only 15 years old. 6 weeks later, the liberators arrived, but it was too late. Of the 8 people who hid in the secret annex, only one survived: Otto Frank. In January 1945, he was freed by the Soviet army from the horrors of Auschwitz and returned to Amsterdam, holding on to the faint hope of reuniting with his family. But as the weeks passed, the harsh truth slowly became clear. His beloved wife Edith had died, and so had his daughters, Anne and Margot. Otto was left alone as the last living soul from the annex. In the midst of his overwhelming grief, Otto received a gift, one he had never expected, but which would forever change his life. Miep Gies, one of the courageous helpers who had risked her life to protect the Franks, had found Anne's diary after their arrest. She had kept it safe, hoping to return it to Anne once the war was over. But with Anne's death now a painful reality, Miep placed the precious pages in Otto's hands. As Otto read his daughter's words, a side of Anne emerged that he had never truly known. The depth of her thoughts, her dreams, and her unwavering hope in the face of unimaginable darkness. Despite the sorrow that consumed him, Otto knew that his daughter's voice had to be heard. Her story, so raw and vivid, became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In 1947, Otto made the difficult decision to have Anne's diary published. The book, The Secret Annex, was born. What began as a private diary grew into one of the most powerful and important historical accounts of the Holocaust. Over the years, Anne's words would be translated into more than 70 languages, ensuring that her voice, her legacy, would never fade into obscurity. But Anne's legacy did not end with the book. Her story would continue to inspire millions of people worldwide, serving as a poignant reminder of the consequences of hatred, and as a testament to the resilience and courage of the human spirit, which, even in the darkest times, can never be silenced. Anne Frank was never able to fulfill her dream of becoming a writer, but her words live on and touch millions of people. What began as a personal account of her time in hiding grew into one of the most read books in the world. Schools, museums, and memorials preserve her story, ensuring that the horrors of the Holocaust are never forgotten. In 1960, the Anne Frank House opened in Amsterdam. The secret annex, where Anne wrote her diary, was preserved as a powerful symbol of remembrance, drawing more than 1 million visitors annually. Anne's legacy extends beyond her diary. Her story serves as a warning against the dangers of prejudice and hatred, but also as proof of resilience, hope, and faith in a better future. Even in the deepest darkness, Anne once wrote, "I want to be useful or bring joy those I've never met. I want to go on living, even after my death. Anne Frank's diary continues to remind us of the power of her voice, even after her death. Her words inspire and teach, urging us to remember the past and strive for a future without hatred. Anne's message remains relevant today. Compassion over hate and the power of hope, even in the darkest times. Let Anne's story be a reminder of the past and a lesson for the future. Sleep well, and remember, even in the darkest times, hope can endure. And if you believe deeply in something, it can become reality.